o'clock, I will call the meeting of the WISD Board of Trustees to order. Please let the record show that all trustees are present. This meeting has been duly posted and called and noted for a time required by manner and law. At this time, I will ask Mr. McCutcheon to lead us in our invocation, followed by Mr. Perry with our pledges.
Okay, if you guys will bow your heads, we'll pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this district, all the employees and students that work so hard to make this a great place to get educated. In this season, the Christmas season, we want to specifically thank you for sending your son for all of us to die on the cross so that we may see you again one day. Please be with everybody here. We appreciate the ones that are getting recognized tonight for all the hard work and effort they put forward this year. And just be with us all and help us to have a great holiday and Christmas season. We ask these things in your son's holy name. Amen. Amen.
Pledge to the American flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda will be recognitions. Ms. Bridges, I think we have several to recognize tonight. Am I correct?
Good evening, board. Yeah, we've got a packed house tonight because of all the awesome things that are happening in our district yet again. The first recognition I would like to do tonight is the girls cross country team. So if you're a member of the cross country team or coach, if you can come up for me, just stand right here. Board, every runner on this team finished the season with a personal record. Emma Curry finished with a personal record of 1854.8 and a school record. Emily Mackle finished with a personal record of 1903.8, broke the school record once this year. She was also second team academic all-state. Allison Moore finished with a personal record of 1923.7 and broke the 2-mile school record. Corey Morgan finished with a personal record of 2032.8. Charlie Heron finished with a personal record of 2044.1. Catherine Bigham finished with a personal record of 2056.9. She was also an elite academic all-state. Mariel Camargo finished with a personal record of 2156.1. And Caitlin Kelly is also here. She was part of the regional team this year. Our girls won district with 20 points, which was 5 points from a perfect score. Emma placed first, Emily second, Allison third, Corey sixth, Catherine eighth, Charlie ninth, and Mariel 15th. At regionals, the girls finished sixth out of 24 teams in the toughest region in Texas. The team that got fourth in our region went on to win the state championship. So you can see what a tough region it was. Emma Curry finished 15th at region to qualify for state, and this is the best girls cross country team in Waxahachie history. And Coach Edward De La Cruz. Thank y'all for being here tonight. Congratulations. The next group that I would like to bring up is our band. If you are here to be recognized for band, please come on up. And I'll go ahead. I've got an entire page of all their accolades, so I'll go ahead and start reading. Midlothian Marching, this is for the marching band. Midlothian Marching Showcase, Class and Grand Champion. Duncanville Marching Invitational, Class and Grand Champion. BOA Dallas, Silver Class Medalist and Finalist. UIL 6A Area Champion, 5th Straight Area Championship. UIL 6A State Finalist and 12th overall. One of only 3 bands to move up from 5A to 6A and make finals in their first year. Yay. All region band accolades. Region Jazz, 14 chairs, 1 alternate, 6 area, and 2 all-state. Area includes Mason Miller, Aaron Rodriguez, Ashton Rostetter, Joey Burke, Cade Andrews, and Ben Barker. And all-state is Ben Barker and Ashton Rostetter. Region Orchestra, 4 chairs, 2 alternates, and 1 area. That area is Brandon Moore. Region Band, 65 chairs, 6 alternates, and 16 area. Those area are Naylee Cruz, Liliana Armstrong, Alex Lopez, Johnny Fuller, Emmeline Bearden, Caitlin Richardson, Danielle Lisicki, Nick Dorzil, Elizabeth Velasquez, Robert Friedman, Emma Watson, Joey Burke, Eli Sines, Ryan Johnson, Colton Val, and Brandon Moore. So total region numbers to date are 2 all-state, 23 area, 83 chairs, and 9 alternates. Nominated for the John Philip Sousa Sedler Shield, International Award recognizing excellence in marching bands, 2 to 4 programs chosen yearly. They have also been invited to perform at the TASA Midwinter Conference in Austin. That's the Texas Association of School Administrators Conference, and 1 band is chosen yearly to perform. So they have done a lot this year. Congratulations. I'm so sorry. I would be remiss if I did not point out that their amazing band directors are also here. So let's give them a hand too, because they work really hard. Thank y'all so much. For the last group that I would like to recognize, we are calling them Campus Warriors. As we know, school safety and security has been a huge focus for the district and the board. The Waxahachie Police Department, along with local other first responders, is a great partner to us. And the WPD recently sent plainclothes officer to several campuses in the district to see how difficult it would be for them to gain access. While we did find a few areas to work on, overall we're very, very proud of how our staff responded to having a stranger on campus. There are several staff members who were specifically recognized by the WPD as having a strong performance and a strong knowledge of our district safety and security policies, and we would like to recognize them tonight. So when I call your name, if you'll please come up. From Marvin Elementary, Lori Williams, Child Nutrition, Holly Byers in the front office, Trey Marsh, Security. From Clift Elementary, Pamela Cooks, Child Nutrition, and Teresa Hall, 5th grade teacher. From Dunaway Elementary, Demisha Williams, Child Nutrition, Jana Bisbee, Security. And from Turner Pre-K, Laura Dotson, Child Nutrition, Connie Sierra, Front Office, and Erin Itzen, Security. Thank you for all you do to keep our kids safe. Thank you all so much for being here and for everything that you do for our kids. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Ashley. I thought you were done. I'm so sorry. Thank y'all very, very much. Thank you, board.
Wow. Okay, next on our agenda is item number 4 under reports. For those of you following, we're going to go a little out of line on our agenda. We're going to go straight to item number C, school safety review update. Mr. Offenshine.
Yeah, that's a good follow-up from that presentation we just made.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sir.
And at this time, before I begin, I want to acknowledge the presence of some of our very fine high school students. The board, I'm sure, is aware that there was a recent anonymous letter to the editor in the Waxahachie Daily Light. And sadly, it's hard sometimes to disprove a negative, but we've got some high school students that care deeply about their school. They care deeply about their school's reputation. They care deeply about informing the public as to the real picture of what their school looks like on a day-to-day basis. So before I give you an update on your safety and security proposals that you approved at the beginning of the year, and before I talk to you about our efforts to combat issues pertaining to drug use among students, I think it's appropriate that you hear from the students themselves. So I know we have Camille Willett in attendance tonight. I know there may be some other students that want to speak too, but I'm going to tender my time right now to Ms. Willett and whomever else may want to come speak.
If you would, you please approach the microphone? Just state your name, please.
I'm Camille Willett, and I'm the student body president at Waxahachie High School.
I'm Morgan Ray, and I'm the senior class president at Waxahachie High School.
I'm Catherine Bigham, and I'm the student body secretary.
I'm Sophie Mielik, and I'm the senior class vice president.
On behalf of Waxahachie High School and all the students there, I just wanted to come and talk about some of the issues that were addressed concerning things going on in the school and maybe some problems that we have to work on. I did write a letter to the editor. I'm sure a lot of you have seen already, so I don't want to reiterate myself too much, but I did want to come in support of our administration team at the high school and the security officers and all of the teachers there that work hard every day to keep us safe and also give us a great learning environment. I just wanted to start with a big thank you to Mr. Casas and the rest of the administration at the high school, because I think it's safe to say that I've never had an administration team that has been so positive and just respectful of students, and that, you know, we're going to mess up and we have choices to make and things are going to happen, but yet still being able to lay down rules and understand, yes, we might break them or mess up, but like, here's the consequences. No matter what, this is what happens. And so I really do want to thank them. I think moving from last year to this year, it's just, there's been such a change in the environment and the way students are behaving. We still have a lot of the same issues, but it's being handled in such a great way. And I'm very appreciative and glad that I get to work with them a lot. As a student body president, I do see them every day. I see their stress and the responsibilities that they take on just throughout the school. I know everyone here knows, and I'm self-aware enough to say that high school students are, you know, a handful, and they're trouble sometimes. I get it, but they always come back with a smile on their face, and they're ready to do it all over again. You know, we mess up, and they never say, well, that's the end of that, and they still keep it positive, and it's never just like a prison environment where we don't have any freedoms. They really want to work with us and give us a chance to make our own decisions and kind of grow as students and stuff. We do have issues, and I don't want to minimize that or take that away or in any way say that like it's not a problem, but I do kind of want to point out that it is a real world kind of issues. I mean, this isn't something that's just happening in Waxahachie High School or Ennis or Midlothian or anywhere. I mean, this is nationwide kind of things that people are struggling with everywhere. And they're not, there's no sure fix on it. You know, we can't prevent everything, but I think it's very important that we recognize the hard work that our administration and security team and the teachers are doing to make sure that we're safe. They put in a lot of work and try, you know, they do their best, and I think that's one thing that we should look at. Like I said, it's unpreventable, some of the things, and it's just important to see their work that they put in to make it safe and make our environment still not like too strict or too loose even. So I don't want to reiterate myself too much, but I'm very proud of Waxahachie High School, and I'm very proud of all the work that everyone there puts in, and I hope that I can be a voice for the rest of the student body and stand up for my administration staff, because I am very proud of them. And I wanted to thank you guys for giving me the time to speak tonight. I really appreciate it, and I hope I can give you some insight into what's going on in the high school, and yeah, thank you.
Ms. Willett, I want to just tell you thank you for coming and speaking before the board. I actually would encourage any of your other fellow students to please come and participate in this process, because there's nothing more better feedback than we can get from the kids that we make decisions on every day.
And Mr. President, there was a person, this person who wrote the letter in the paper has real concerns, and we want to respect that. Mr. Casas and I would like to offer that parent and or that child the opportunity to meet with either one of us or together or even through an intermediary, because we want to respect the fact that that person want to be anonymous, because we are not, as that young lady said, minimizing those concerns. If there is a parent with a concern, if it's a concern to that parent, it's a concern to us. So I would like to offer that.
Okay. Mr. Alvenstein, we can continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Interim Superintendent.
What a title.
And so to start, and we have several items for update, but one of the things that the board wanted addressed was in regard to drug prevention. And so that was not specifically one of the 13 items, the 13 items that were approved, considered by the board in July and approved by the board in August. But it's something that's always top of mind. It's something that's always a concern and something that we continually seek to address. And so just to look at what our drug offenses are this year, we've had 13 offenses total, and that's as of to date. So none in August, 2 at the high school in September, 4 for the district in October, 3 at the high school, 1 at Coleman, 6 for the district in November, 5 at the high school, 1 at Coleman, 1 at the high school in December. So 13 total for the district. 1 is too many. We don't want the presence of drugs in our school, but of over 4,000 secondary students and 4,000 plus elementary students, almost 9,000 students total, we have 13 offenses this year. Breaking down the demographics, it largely meets the demographics of the district. 2 African-American students, 3 Hispanic, Latino students, 5 white students, 1 of 2 or more races, and then 7 of the total students economically disadvantaged. So largely meets with our demographics. And so again, we know that where there are students, there may be access to drugs, and we want to combat that access to drugs. And so how are these offenses dealt with? All of these 13 students ultimately assigned to DAEP, our alternative school. We take it seriously. We want to remove that when we find it from the campus. But ultimately, all of those old tools are still in use to detect the presence of drugs, meaning if drugs are on someone's person or if someone's attempting to deal those drugs. Ultimately, anytime a teacher's made aware, an aide's made aware, a security guard's made aware, an administrator's made aware, there's an investigation. There's an opportunity to confront the students for which there's a reasonable suspicion of that drug use or the presence of drugs or paraphernalia for drugs. And then the pursuit then to determine whether drugs are present, whether drugs have been used, and then to punish accordingly. What are the other tools utilized to detect drugs? Well, one of the other tools that the board approved last year was the suspicionless random searches. And before this year, the board approved us to move from a 5-panel screen to a 10-panel screen. We've had 2 rounds of our drug screening this year for all of our students that are engaged in extracurricular activities, and so far this year we've had 2 positives. And so because those are suspicionless searches, the consequence then relates to the participation in extracurricular activities. It's not school-related punishment, but it is the removal of school-related activities until such time as the student goes to counseling and tests again with a negative test after at least a minimum 10-day suspension from their activities. And like I said, so far we've done 2 rounds of testing, tested well over 100 students. We've had 2 positives, and those positives are for marijuana. We have another test coming up in December on an unspecified day, but we have 9 days left in December. So one of those 9 days, or 8 days actually, we will be doing drug testing on the secondary campuses. And so, as I said, those 2, even though we expanded to a 10-panel screen, just marijuana still is the drug that we're seeing. Another tool we have then, when the board gave us the 13-item the 13-item security improvements in August, one of those items was screening with wanding, metal detection. Well, the metal detection is geared to find weapons, knives, guns. Fortunately, we have implemented the metal wanding screening on our campuses. We've not detected any knives, guns on the campus, but one of the things that ultimately can be found on occasion is drug paraphernalia. We have found some jewels that are used for vaping, some lighters, and then once you have that contact with the student upon being searched may act suspicious, may start to hide or seek to guard pockets, leads to a discussion with security guard, and one student during a metal wand search, ultimately there was detection and finding marijuana on that student. So that process has enabled us to not just detect those items that protect our school, like weapons, but then detect those illegal drugs brought into school. So going through an update of the items that the board has approved and then the implementation, we presented to the board in September the current implementation at that time, and then today is an update. So we've prepared a table for the board to see all those things that the board approved, those 13 items, and then the district's status of completion on those items. You know, items like the addition of a second school resource officer, we were able to implement before school started. We've provided some comments regarding plans that the board may consider, and we'll bring back to the board this spring thoughtful plan to potentially add a third SRO and start that discussion early with the Waxahachie Police Department. We invite Waxahachie Police Department to each of our regular meetings of the District Crisis Management Team. Wade Goolsby came to our last meeting of the Crisis Management Team and added a lot of productive thoughts, and we will continue to work with him as we implement all of the board's safety measures. In regard to hiring local officers from the police department and the sheriff's office, as the chart shows, we've had 132 jobs that we've posted through both the local law enforcement. We've had about 75% coverage for those jobs. So that's adding the presence of officers. On down in the chart, another item that the board wanted us to pursue was inviting officers, whether it be troopers, police department, sheriff's office deputies, to the schools. And we've been doing that through providing workspace on the campuses, lunches, just to get that presence of law enforcement there. And I believe our public is taking notice of the regular vision of that either state trooper car or the police car there in front of the school and seeing the presence of the officer on campus. Our marshal plan. Each of our campuses has an appointed marshal. We have to continually work to update as we send individuals to training. And so there's an item later tonight to approve the appointment of additional marshals. But the board was able to take action early, and the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement was able to provide training this summer so that we were able to send a substantial number to training so that they could have the ability then to come back as an appointed marshal to fulfill that plan. None of the officers appointed by the district are those whose day-to-day assignment involves the constant supervision of students such that they are able then to carry a firearm concealed on their person. Under the current status of the law, their actual identities are all confidential, so I can't disclose who our appointed marshals are, but we have school-appointed marshals on all of our campuses. As for guardians, there's been substantial discussion regarding the guardians. The board has approved a policy so that we can have the authorization to approve guardians, and it will be for the board to essentially set aside funds, roughly $3,000 per guardian, to begin the appointment process of guardians. The appointment process of guardians under the policy approved by the board will be similar to that of marshals, meaning they'll be screened for mental fitness, physical fitness, go to training before they'd be authorized to have a firearm on campus. In regard to the discipline policy for students and staff that would leave our facilities unsecure, over in the comments, we've referenced the provisions that have been added to the student handbook and within the student code of conduct. We've added that language and then provided staff training before the school year started in regard to the discipline for students who might leave a door open so that a visitor could come in to an unsecure door. All visitors are supposed to come to the secure vestibule, then be checked in the front office. Crisis counseling for students is needed. One, we have a full-time crisis counselor at the high school, and then two, all of our district counselors are going to attend training on one of our staff work days before we resume this spring. So on January 7th, all of our counselors will get training from the North Texas Behavioral Health Authority. In regard to training staff on security, lockdown, evacuation procedures, we followed the state's plan. So that's the I Love You Guys Foundation. We've trained almost 200 employees, and those employees are able to train the employees on their campuses. So we've brought all the campus leaders, district leaders, multiple folks from each campus to receive that training, and then have been able, through Eric Kyle, his efforts, and then the campus's efforts, to ensure that that emergency operation procedure training was provided at each campus and each department. Implementation of delayed evacuation model to ensure pulled fire alarms are not false. Ultimately, as secure as our buildings are built, the greater risk in 2018 in the event of a pulled alarm, sadly, is that threat of false alarm, where someone could use that opportunity to make victims of those fleeing the classroom than the fire itself. And so anytime there's a pulled alarm, there will be a response. There will be an immediate response. Ultimately, 30 to 60 seconds, the campus administrator will make a call, make a decision, make an announcement. Either we will evacuate, meaning we've determined that there's no threat of an active shooter, and at that point we will utilize either there's a threat of fire and they're evacuating, or it will be essentially a drill, but we will evacuate. Or if we have an active shooter, we will make the immediate call lockdown, and at that time the Teachers will remain in place with their students in a locked, secure classroom, and we will make that call, 911 call, to fire, who will be responding to the fire alarm, and police to come immediately to respond to the active shooter. In regard with working with and training community members to provide visibility of volunteer security, we had an excellent partnership begin through this process with Waxahachie Police Department, OT Glidewell, with the troopers, Lee Coronado, and our own Melissa Cobb worked together. And on on November 5th and November 7th, there in the community room of the police department, we had training for approximately 50 people. They were solicited from our dads at the door, from our PTOs, from our organization, our volunteers, to come and have the opportunity to receive training. And we will have another opportunity to train staff at our upcoming Camp iNation on January 8th when we're training staff. But it's an opportunity to just talk to our volunteers, our concerned volunteers who want to help us in our efforts to keep our schools safe, to provide them the opportunity to know what to do in the event they see something that is alarming, to react to any causes of concern, and to help us protect the school. Implementation of teen leadership programs, junior high campuses to work with our security officers and SROs. I know Mrs. Bridges has worked on that. I believe she's about to give an update.
Absolutely. So board, we've had a really great opportunity this year for a group of high school students and a group of junior high students to participate in the Chick-fil-A Leader Academy. Our local Chick-fil-A has sponsored these students to do this program. This program is all about being a leader by giving back to your community. And it really has some great principles. So we're very excited. We just started it at the end of November with our junior high students. We started it with our high school students in September, so it'll go through the end of the school year. And we're very grateful to our local Chick-fil-A partner, Philip Brown, for doing that for us. Can I go ahead and do the next one?
Go ahead.
Okay. What I just passed out to you guys, this was in your board book, I think on June 28th, I want to say. But this is the communication process for parents with emergencies. And so we want to make sure that our parents feel like they are notified in a timely fashion and given all the information that they need when there is an issue on campus. So this policy, once you all have had a chance to review it and take a look and approve it, we will implement the emergency communications policy, plus we'll publish the second page, or the third page, which is the emergency guide for parents and visitors. And this is something that McKinney ISD, I found something similar on their website, and I thought it was great. It really, I think, as a parent, would help me to understand, okay, if I hear about an emergency, this is what I need to do to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, not only for my child, but to help the process go smoothly for the district and all the other children at the school. So I look forward to any feedback that you all have on that. And as soon as you've had a chance to take a look, we will publish the emergency guide and we'll implement that policy.
And so, board, I just thank you for this opportunity to present the report. School safety and security is of utmost importance to us. We will be continuously updating our efforts and bring you updates as you request them. Like I said, our last update to you in regard to the implementation of your security measures was in September.
Drug dog.
Okay, thank you. So in regard to drug dogs, I know InterQuest, last week we had the presence of drug dogs on all of our campuses, all of our secondary campuses. Last week we will have drug dogs through InterQuest at all of our secondary campuses twice a month going forward in the spring semester. So we will be ever present, whether it be drug dogs or us also obviously the drug testing, the suspicious drug testing that the board is offering. So we will continue to work, and again, as the board desires more updates, we will certainly be prepared to bring those to you as every day. It's top of mind. Every day, we want to make sure we're returning those students to home in the same condition that they came in. of utmost importance to all of our campus administrators and our district administrators. I just thank you for your foresight and the tools you've given us to be able to do it effectively this school year. Do you have any questions?
Any questions or comments for Mr. Alvenshine?
I have a question. How many rounds of random drug testing how many rounds of random drug testing and the drug dogs and the random wanting have we been able to complete so far?
Rounds of random drug testing, we've done 2, one in October, one in November. We didn't do one in September because we were bringing you a proposal to go from 5 to 10 drug panel screens. So again, 1 per month, and that's what we will do going forward. In regard to our drug dogs, I believe we've only had the 1 round during the month of December. We had a lapse in our contract on our drug dogs. We've re-upped that contract through InterQuest, and we'll be able to do 2 rounds at each of our secondary campuses going forward for the spring semester. In regard to our wanding, it was implemented, and I gave you a schedule. It was implemented in the month of November. So I know that ultimately the board had approved our use of the wanding at the August 6th meeting. At August 27th, we brought to you FNF local, which is the board policy, which would authorize it. So on August 27th, we had the wanding authorized, put out a PO to obtain the wands, got the wands in October, and implemented the wanding in November. And we will continue to utilize the wanding going forward.
Anyone else? No? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Alvenshine.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, now we'll go back and get in order. The item A, the TASB Human Resources Departmental Review.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I'll let our TSB representative introduce herself and her team. The board was interested and even appointed a board member to work with TASB. Thank you, Ms. Darnader, for your oversight and help in getting this to be as comprehensive as possible. It's a long report. It's a very good report. So I included it in the agenda and sent it to the board previously so that with the board's permission, actually, I have asked her just to answer questions rather than make a presentation. But if you feel like you would like, with whatever degree of presentation, they all speak well from their feet because they work very hard on this. So would you like just to answer questions or would you like a presentation?
What's the pleasure of the board? Go ahead, Melissa, you want to ask? Absolutely.
Sure, a brief overview would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Amy Campbell, Director of HR Services at the Texas Association of School Boards. That's a mouthful, so we just say TASB. And with me, I have Karen Dooley, Senior HR Consultant, and April Mabry, Assistant Director. So we do HR reviews among a lot of other HR support things for districts around the state. We work with about 170 each year. We have over 1,000 district members that call us for resources, but that 170 seek us out for extra guidance and support because HR folks in school districts are busy doing a whole lot of stuff and they don't always have the time or resources or expertise to do what we are lucky enough to get to do for them. So what we did for you all was an HR review where we looked at strategic HR operations to ensure both that you're in compliance with all of the things you need to be compliant with, rules, regulations, laws, and statutes, but also so that there are strategic HR forces in place to where you can do and where Mr. Alvenshine and his staff can do what is necessary to move the district forward and support your goals as a board for the district. So we started, ladies, how long ago was that? 2 months ago? About 2 months ago. We came and met with y'all. So the last time we saw you, we were here collecting information from all of the district administrators, as well as board members about where you wanted the district to go and how HR can support you and your strategic goals for the district. So we collected that qualitative information. We also collected quantitative information from peer districts. So similarly sized and similarly situated districts across the state We collected organizational charts, sought out their HR staffing so that we can, again, provide guidance to you what other districts look like in terms of how they staff their HR department. We also did a customer service survey. Feel free to chime in, ladies, if you'd like. A customer service survey throughout the district of the services that HR provides, what was particularly great, what they thought could be improved, and again, sought feedback from various sources for that. So really what we've brought back to you in this very meaty report, thank you for taking the time to read it, is guidance from a strategic perspective. We're, again, not being dictatorial. We're not going to tell you what's best for the district, but give you guidance on what your peer districts do, what are best practices to create and maintain a strategically focused HR department, and to make sure that you have the resources internally available to do that. And you'll see in your first couple of recommendations there, you have a much smaller HR staff than your peer districts do by a couple of FTE. So one of the first recommendations is to consider adding FTE so that you can expand your capacity to be able to do those strategic HR functions. So in your district, you've got essentially 4 total FTE there, or 3.25 rather, total FTE dedicated to HR, whereas your peer districts have a median, so middle range value of 6 and an average of 7. So again, your staff currently is much smaller than what we see in similarly sized districts. And so just ramping up that FTE will allow your HR department to do a lot more than they're capable of accomplishing right now. And some of the other things we recommended were streamlining and efficiencies that will help you focus more on that strategic thing. We do lots of presentations around the state, and Karen and I both worked in school district HR departments. It is really hard when you're treading water, keeping your head above water, keeping all of your vacancies filled, making sure everyone's compliant on FLSA, timesheets, all of those things. It's really hard when you're so focused on that to be strategic. When you've got paper HR files that you have to maintain, it's a lot harder to be focused on how can we hire for diversity? How can we focus on creating a model of our best teacher hire? And so we've been there too. One of the recommendations is to streamline through electronic records and using your HRIS and finance and payroll systems to help avoid the processing that has to be done, or help automate that processing so that they can focus on more, again, big picture, global stuff. That was kind of a very broad overview. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have.
Any other questions? Mr. McCutcheon?
So there was a lot of information in this, and it's kind of like, how do you eat an elephant?
Yes.
One bite at a time. So do y'all help with implementation of this, or at this point is it completely on the district to figure out what steps to take?
So what we try to do in the report is provide you, there's up arrows and down arrows in there. So a return on investment and ease of implementation for each recommendation. So that's our take on it. We hope you filter in your feedback, but the return on investment is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. So if it's easy to implement and it's a high return on investment, that's stuff you should absolutely prioritize and knock out, because you're going to get, and those are rare, but you'll get a big impact for little output. You'll see more of these where it's high impact, but you have to work for it. Really, I'd say if you ask my personal opinion, staffing up to be able to accomplish those things should be priority number one, because Lee and his staff are not going to be able to tackle all of these little recommendations until he has enough resources in his group, until the district has enough HR resources to be able to work on those.
Typically after departmental reviews, and we're doing other reviews as every department, because it doesn't matter how good we think we are, you're only as good as your end users say you are, and that's why the audits the departmental reviews are so good. So every departmental review we do comes with recommendations. So our next step after we present it to the board is that we get together and call as needed, because part of their service is, and we come back with a plan. Here's all the recommendations. Here's who's responsible for seeing it happen. here's a timeline, because there's so many here, you can't expect them to be done in a year. So again, we prioritize it, of course. Kind of
Absolutely. And because the district is a member of HR Services, y'all can pick up the phone at any time and call us, and we will give you our advice, guidance, opinions, et cetera. Part of that process, as Dr. Kane said, is as you go through these, it's a meaty enough report as it is. If we gave you step-by-step implementation, you'd never get through it. I'm a little bit ADHD, so I'm lucky I read through the whole report. Just kidding. So we are happy to spend time to work through recommendation by recommendation, and we absolutely don't think this is even a one-year implementation. This is going to be over a lengthy period of time.
And the idea is we bring it back to the board after it's been cleansed through the TASB recommendations. Then the board has an idea and a timeline. We report back to the board, kind of like Mr. Allenstein reported on the security audit. But again, this will be with every department review. Then you would ask them to come back in 4 or 5 years, do another review based on did we implement those things. So each year you would expect that we would be getting into best practices. Again, that's with every audit that we do.
And part of when we start asking as outsiders, when we start asking what's working and what's not working, the answers we get aren't always geared in a narrow focus towards HR related things, right? We hear about salary competitiveness, and we hear about staffing levels and all of those other things. And so, just in general, it's a good practice to do an employee opinion or engagement survey every year or two, just to take the temperature of what your employees are thinking. So we have suggested other things that might benefit the district just from the feedback we heard that might be tangentially related to the HR stuff. But.
The districts we were compared to, was that, what were the parameters? The enrollment, was that basically?
Yes, so the district enrollment size and number of employee FTEs are going to dictate the HR needs of the district. And so similarly sized districts, it was within about 300 to 500 students of yours.
Longview jumped out at me. It's shocking that we're comparable to Longview.
In terms of size, yes, yeah. And they were a bit of an outlier on the FTE, but when we look at the median, that's the middle value of all those. So the tiny guys are kind of shaved off the median, and the big outliers on the top are shaved off as well.
So I think moving forward, it's going to be up to us as a board to give a directive to our superintendent how we want to start implementing this plan. And we asked for it. And we would be, we would be foolish not to take the professionals' advice. I think the two things that stood out to me were, one, we need more people, and our people need more space.
Yes.
And I think those two things are going to continue to grow as our district continues to grow. So how we want to move forward with that, we need to be pretty clear to our administration on how we're going to do that. Because at the end of the day, it all falls on us. Are there any suggestions?
Just give us some.
But that's what I'm saying. On where do we start?
Can I add something real quick?
Absolutely.
I just want to give some kudos to the district already for taking a couple bites of that elephant even before we got here. One of the recommendations was to increase the non-exempt FTE, so those are the hourly staff, and HR already has done that. So very proactively trying to address some of the recommendations that we've made. And so I think, and I know Lee mentioned some others when we talked last too, that they're already seeing the easy fixes or easier fixes and tackling those right away. So just to give kudos to the district for already chipping away at those.
The other thing is y'all have a strong tool too in your HRIS, your business financial HR system that you're using. It's a very strong system that you already have in place. Sometimes we have to recommend changes to that, which can be very, very costly. So that's another kudo that y'all invested in something, a tool out there that's very helpful for automating things and making things move forward in that manner.
Could you clarify that for a technical dummy? Does that mean that we could use a system we currently have for these electronic records?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure I understood.
That is correct.
Yes.
And I will say also, there's plans at the past Midwinter Conference to do a presentation with myself and a superintendent from a district that we did an HR review for. And he sat with the board and did some prioritization and then gave that then to HR and said, okay, we're gonna work with a team, and it was the superintendent, the HR department, technology, the business office, curriculum and instruction, and they meet monthly on this 5-year plan that they developed out of an HR review. So just kind of let y'all know something that another district did, for whatever that's worth, but it's been very successful with them moving forward.
And actually, in the workshop we just had, the board talked about starting the next workshop. Thank you. Starting the next workshop with those goals. I like that idea of getting with the board and saying, okay, this is what we think is important, and that's what you were talking about, working with the board's goals other than the instructional goals.
Mr. Arnett, you want to say something?
I'd like to make a suggestion. The two things that our superintendent brought up, more people and more space. I'm confident in our superintendent's ability to figure out how best to do that.
I mean, like posting the job, posting the HR job, and then start working on that, and then look at then letting the HR person come in, HR director come in, and then talk about kind of handing it over to that person for the other, was it 2 jobs?
So we had recommended 2 professional positions, 1 full-time chief HR job and 1 HR director. Yes.
Okay, so go ahead with that. And post.
Anyone else down there?
Is this an action item, or is
It's
this
not
just
an
a
action
report?
item.
Okay.
Strictly a report.
Okay, okay.
So, but do we need board permission, or was that board permission to go ahead and post that job?
The position was already
Madam
approved.
Superintendent, I'll be working with you to post position.
Okay, but I mean, we don't need, do we need, I'm saying, do we need board action to create the new position?
No, we already created it, didn't we?
Oh,
I think
that's
it's already
true.
been created.
You have one.
That and a fine arts director, so just go ahead and post, I mean, we've kind of been playing with that one, so.
We had those positions in the
Have
budget.
been approved. Okay, well then we'll go forward. Thank you very much.
The 1 HR position and the 1 fine arts position.
Okay, well, we already have, thank you.
Do
for
we need to
reminding
create
me.
another position for the additional person at HR?
We wouldn't have to create it to post it.
Okay.
We have, in the past, posted some positions. Anytime I would then seek to hire a position that hasn't been previously approved by the board at the time we brought the person back, we would ask, if we needed to, for whatever requisite amendment would be to the budget to make sure we had that position in there.
Well, then let's go ahead and do that in January, because again, we wouldn't want to post the assistant director job until the director was on board. But, so we go ahead and get that permission, then that way, whenever that next process happens.
Absolutely.
Because I'd like to think
That would be
that
my
we
only
would,
concern, is the budgetary impact of both positions. Making sure we're,
well, the two, the HR job, the HR director and the fine arts director are actually already in the budget. So you're talking about the third one, which would be, and I'm thinking it's probably likely that person may be, okay, you're looking at January, maybe February, then, that person in March, so it might be at the end of this year, or I'll check with Mr. Calder, because there could be a position that's left and it hadn't been filled.
I was actually talking about the first 2. Are those built into the budget, Ryan, already?
Yes, sir. When those positions get approved, we build them into the budget, whether they're filled or not.
So yeah, fine arts director and HR director are already in the budget. And so we'll see, would you see if there's any other jobs that we've not filled? Not tonight, but, or that's been approved that we may not have. Oh, well, you know what? Actually, the savings from not hiring the HR director and the fine arts director the first half of the year would pay for the third person. Correct? Well, but they wouldn't, the earliest they could possibly be on would be April. So you're looking at April, May, June, July. Okay. Good question. Always making me think.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your excellent work. And remember, the board had already approved the employee opinion survey, and Mr. Robenshine's already communicating with Ms. Guillory? Ganell. And we should have that at the March meeting, the employee opinion survey.
Amy, thank y'all for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Now it'd be.
Okay, item B, 2017, 2018 annual financial audit. I'm gonna guess that's you, Mr.
Well, no, actually, the
No?
auditor's here.
Oh, okay. I didn't see him back there.
Yes, sir. Ryan. Come on, sir, it'd be
Come on.
fine. Ryan's visiting. Be nice to introduce him.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and talk to you about the audit and go over the results. I think the audit went very well. The district continues to be in excellent financial condition, and we will look at some of those numbers briefly, and then I'll be available to answer questions if you have any. The first thing I want to cover is a letter that was in your packet. It's a 3-page letter that's a required communication to the board. It's kind of an executive overview, if you will. It's designed to point out any significant problems that may have come up during the audit. I'm happy to say that there really were none. So most of this letter is boilerplate. The first page talks about our responsibilities under audit standards as your independent auditor. And then the second and third page go into some of the required elements of the communication. There is one thing that I want to point out that's a little bit different. The second paragraph on the second page talks about your accounting policies and practices. There was a new Governmental Accounting Standards Board accounting standard that had to be implemented in the fiscal year 18. It had to do with the recording of the district's share of the liability for TRS Care, which is the retiree health insurance program in Texas. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more when we actually get into the financial statements, but this does point out to you that recording that, since it was a new standard, the beginning liability had to be recorded as what we refer to as a prior period adjustment. So we took your beginning net position and it was reduced by 47.9 million due to this new accounting standard requiring you to record that proportionate share of the liability. And as I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. But the rest of the letter, there were no findings, there were no problems dealing with management. We had full access to the records. There were no disagreements with management regarding accounting issues or auditing issues, and there were no other issues. So again, a positive report. Next, I'll go over the actual audit report, which was in your packet, and I think you've also got a hard copy tonight. It's in the gray folder. I'll start out with our independent auditor's report, which starts on page 5. The report is what's referred to as an unmodified report, meaning that no issues had to be brought up. We do talk about the prior period adjustment that we just talked about in the top of page 6. It just describes that and states that our opinion is not modified with respect to the matter, which means you've implemented it the correct way. So the report is the highest level of reporting that you can receive as a governmental entity. There's no findings, there's no compliance issues. The district is in very good financial condition. I want to start out looking at that by looking at your governmental funds, this being your the general fund, the debt service fund, the capital projects fund. This is the presentation that most people look at when they look at a governmental entity. And if you look on page 20, this is where the governmental fund statements start. The general fund is in the first column. You can see next to the bottom number at the bottom of the page, you ended the year right at 28 million in general fund balance. That's a slight decrease from the prior year, which we'll talk about in a minute. Your unassigned fund balance is 22.9 million. That is a healthy fund balance for the general fund. It represents about 29% of your expenditures. Most financial analysts consider anywhere from 3 to 4 months a healthy fund balance. You're between 3 and 4, so I would say that that's a good amount. That excludes $4 million that's been committed in prior years for construction. So that's shown on line 3510, just an amount that was committed by the board several years ago to provide for future construction projects. Your debt service fund is the second column. You can see you ended the year at 2.9 million. Again, that's a healthy amount for the level of debt service that you have. And then your capital projects is in the third column. You ended the year at 2.9 million. That's the amount that's remaining at August 31st of your most recent bond issue. Well, not your most recent, because that happened in the current fiscal year, but the bond issue as of August 31st, this is the remaining amount that had not been spent to complete the high school and other campus reconfiguration projects. So again, the changes in those balances are shown on page 24 and 25. As we mentioned, the general fund decreased about $336,000, which is a fairly small decrease. There were quite a few construction and capital asset purchases made out of the general fund, which was the result of that decrease. You can see on line 81, there was 2.5 million of facilities acquisition and construction paid for out of the general fund. And then there was also quite a bit of equipment that was purchased, buses and things of that nature. The debt service fund is in the second column, increased by $472,000. That's a result of your continuing growth in property tax values. And then the third column is the capital projects fund, decreased by $55.6 million, which was basically the money spent to complete the high school and those other planned projects out of bond proceeds. You started the year with $58.5 million and had $2.9 million remaining at the end of the year. So I think your governmental funds are in excellent shape. I want to go back now and look at what are referred to as the government-wide financial statements. These take your governmental funds and combine them or consolidate them into one presentation. The government-wide statement adds your capital assets and it adds your long-term debt, which are not presented in the fund financial statements that we just looked at. The government-wide statement of net position is on page 17. And this is where that most recent Governmental Accounting Standards Board implementation of that new standard shows up. If you look at line 2545, where it says net OPEB liability, 26.7 million, that is the district's proportionate share of the unfunded liability for TRS Care. Those of you that have been on the board a while, you may remember 5 years ago, we implemented a similar standard on pensions. You can see on the line right above the OPEB liability is your pension liability, which is 14 million. So we implemented that 5 years ago. That was a GASB standard that came out at that time. They followed that up with what they refer to as OPEB, or other post-employment benefits. That's really any post-employment benefit other than pensions. So they dealt with pensions in one standard and all other post-employment benefits in the other. In Texas schools, the post-employment benefit is TRS Care, which is retiree health insurance. The reason that the number is so large is that the TRS Care program is a pay-as-you-go program. The contributions that go into the plan each year are used that year to pay the premiums or the health care cost. There's no trust fund like there is on the pension plan. The pension plan has $140 billion in assets, which are all of the contributions that people have made over the years and districts in the state. The pension plan is about 82% funded. So that's why your unfunded liability is less than the OPEB liability, because the TRS Care program is less than 1% funded at the end of each year. It just carries over a small operating reserve. So it's a pay-as-you-go plan. So the liability is greater than the pension plan. If you look at the liability and compare that to the beginning of the year prior period adjustment, the liability actually went down considerably during the year, and it kind of created some unusual looking numbers in the government-wide statements. And the reason for that was that in the most recent legislative session, the legislature made some fairly significant changes to the TRS Care program. They raised the percentage that districts have to pay in. They raised the percentage that the state pays in. They raised the premiums that retirees have to pay. They reduced some of the coverages that retirees had that were more favorable coverages, raised deductibles and things like that. So all of those things combined lowered the future liability considerably. And so that's reflected in this financial statement. And that's the reason that your ending liability is much smaller than your beginning liability, because those changes took effect during the plan year that's reported. That's probably more than you ever wanted to know about OPEB, but it's a fairly significant number, so I wanted to let you know where that came from. Just to point out a couple of highlights in the footnotes, page 44 is a schedule of your capital assets. You can see under buildings and improvements, we had additions of $121 million. That was obviously putting the new high school into service, as well as a few other building renovations. You can see that there was $63 million in construction in progress at the beginning of the year, which was rolled out of construction in progress into the new building. So the $121 million is what was added in the current year plus the previous year's construction in progress. The bottom of page 45 shows you your outstanding debt. And then the top of page 46 shows you your future debt service payments. They're pretty consistent at about $16 million a year for the next 5 years. And then we show groups of 5 years after the first 5 years. But you really don't have any escalation in your debt service schedule. You have done a bond issue since the end of the year, which will increase your debt service. And that's the new bond issue for the new elementary school. Your property tax collections were 99.5% of the levy, which is a very good number. Very high collection rate. That's fairly common I don't know if you consider yourself a suburban district or not, but a lot of fairly new housing where people pay their taxes through their mortgage payment. That creates a very high collection percentage. If you look at page 76, that shows you your Property tax collections, page 76. You can see in column 3, your property values went up almost 10%. I believe it was 9.8%. And then page 77 shows you the amount of delinquent taxes, and they actually went down for the year. That's reflected in your very high collection percentage. So the last thing I want to cover is a couple of additional auditors' reports that start on page 83. There's 2 reports, one on 83 and 84, and then one on 85 and 86. These are additional reports that we are required to do because the district receives both state and federal grants. The first report on page 83 covers all of your grants, both state and federal. And then the report on page 85 covers what are referred to as major federal programs. Each year we have to select certain federal programs based on their size and an audit rotation schedule to apply additional audit procedures to as a major program audit. For this year, the major program was the child nutrition program. Both of the reports I just mentioned, again, are unmodified. There are no findings or no compliance issues, so they're both clean reports. That's all I have. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that the board might have.
Any individual questions? I would say in summary, we're in pretty good shape.
I would
Is that
say
a good
so,
way to
yes.
put it?
Yes.
Okay.
Darn good.
I think that's a direct reflection of Mr. Calden
Yes,
in
it
his,
is.
in his office on the financial shape that our district is in. All right. Thank you very much.
That and the board has made wise decisions in the past in terms of budgeting. And I mean, you really control the fund balance, and they do a great job of accounting for everything, but and providing you the information that you need to make those decisions.
Yeah, bear with me just a second, because I'm not being adversarial at all. I'm a year 1 trustee, so I'm still learning.
Sure.
But a lot of times, and Ryan, jump in if you want to, a lot of times we're asked about our debt, and almost $500 million. And that sounds like a big number. I know it does. Because I've had to answer that question along the campaign trail, et cetera. Hey, what are we going to do about our debt? Everything's about our debt being what it is. But as far as debt to income ratio, what is the appropriate response as far as trying to explain our situation to
the first thing is it's not $500 million, it's $264 million.
Plus the interest. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, interest is, if you borrow $250,000 for your house.
Right.
You're going to pay
it's part of the $500,000
yes, right. over the life of the loan. But in terms of the principal that's outstanding, it's about $264 million. And what I was talking about at the top of page 46 is your debt service requirements. The fact that they're not escalating, they're staying the same basically, right. So that you can service your debt with your current tax rate, assuming your taxable values don't go down, and your taxable values have actually been going up, which if you look back at the tax schedule on page 76, your current tax rate's just a hair over 38 cents for the debt service side. So you've got, as you well know, the maximum is 50 cents, so you've got some room there. Of course, you'll use a little bit of that on the new bond issue that was just done for the elementary school. But I mean, you're in excellent financial condition in terms of the ability to service your debt. You're well below the 50-cent maximum, which is unusual for the Dallas-Fort Worth. If you look at Dallas-Fort Worth high-growth districts, well, Midlothian right next door, 50 cents. All of the high-growth districts along the north, Frisco, Plano, Allen, McKinney, those are all at or close to 50 cents. So you've actually done a good job of managing your debt. So that's how I would respond to that, is that your debt is really much lower than many of your peer districts. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and you pointed out something inadvertently on page 46. Why does it jump so substantially in year 2024?
Well,
is that a matter of refinancing?
No, that's a 5-year grouping.
Okay.
The standard.
Oh, I got you.
The standard says to list 5 years individually, and then groups of 5 years after that, just so the schedule is not so long.
Gotcha. I'm with you now.
Was the bond issue that was just done, is that going to require a tax increase?
No, sir.
No.
So even with the new bond that you just issued for the new elementary, you'll still stay at or below that 38 cents.
I just thought there was a magic ratio based on our revenue, debt to revenue. Is there a ratio?
Well, I think the magic ratio is that tax rate.
Okay.
All these other districts that are at 50 cents, that's the maximum that they can go. Well, without voter approval, which, so you're well below that. You're well below your peer districts in terms of the tax rate. You have an excellent underlying bond rating from the bond rating agencies. You know, they look at all your financials, they look at your property values, they look at your enrollment growth, and they give you a rating, and you have a very high underlying rating on your bonding. So I don't have the figures with me, but another measure would be debt per student and debt per population. And I would suspect, I don't know, but I would suspect that those are fairly low compared to your peer districts because your tax rate is as low as it is.
Is that something you have readily available, that number? Not with you tonight, but something.
It's something that we could put together real easily.
That might help us, you know, wherever.
Yeah. Other questions? You bet.
Thank you very much. You're off the hot seat.
Thanks.
Okay, next on our agenda would be item D, performance-based monitoring analysis systems.
Mr. President, Ms. Blaylock was going to present the overview, and she has some assistance. But since Ms. Blaylock is not here and this is not time sensitive, I'm asking if you would allow us to move this to January.
Okay, we can put that on the January agenda. All right, item E, Global High Academic Survey results.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, the board had asked to look into students' opinions on global and what we could do to make it more intriguing to students. And Ms. Jenny is pinch hitting for Ms. Blaylock. And so, Ms. Jenny?
Great. So you all have the survey results there in your board book, and so I won't go over those word for word. But just to give an overview, 1,366 students that represent all 3 junior highs and represent grades 6 through 8 responded to the survey. Nearly 80% of those students who responded said that they would like to attend a school with more options for electives and activities. 43.5% of those students said that they are interested in taking advanced level or college classes while they are in high school. And just over 75% of those students said that they do plan to belong to an organization, a team, or a club in high school. We offered those students a long list of examples of what those clubs or teams might be. Those that interested more than 20% of students responding were student council, yearbook, band, theater, basketball, football, soccer, and volleyball. More than 60% of the students said that the types of classes offered and options for student involvement and leadership are important to them when choosing a high school. And these were the top 2 areas that they identified as being important to them. 42.6% of students said that they would attend Global High School if it offered fine arts, and 64% of students said that they would attend Global High School if it offered athletics. 18.5% of students, which if you do the math is 253 students who responded to the survey, said that they are interested in attending Global High School. 36.9% of those students said that they are still deciding and need more information. So I hope that gives you a good overview of kind of how our junior high students are looking at making their decisions on high school. I'm happy to take any questions. May not be able to answer all of them, but we can certainly get you the information.
Well, and I've had, Mr. President, I've had various board members indicate an interest in Global being growing and offering a wider range of array of activities. Mr. Lynch has 2 academies that he's opening, we're opening, and I think that's going to add to it, and I think the academies is a very viable way, but if, with the board's permission, taking the information from this survey, I would like to, for Mr. Caldron to present kind of the cost and revenues at Global, and then for us to bring a proposal after talking to, well, it would be Coach Reed for athletics, and since we don't have a fine arts director, we'd be kind of touching base with the 4 major components of the fine arts. Talk to Mr. Casas and just kind of get some ideas. And it may be going back to those students and saying, which athletics? You know, okay, you're interested in athletics and fine arts. If you had to put them in order, what order would that be? I mean, but I'd like to bring some information and maybe some suggestions to the board.
I would also encourage you to ask Mr. Lynch to participate in that as well.
I'm sorry. Yes, correct. I should have told you Mr. Lynch was going to be here tonight presenting. His wife had a flat, and so he went to rescue her. This has kind of been a disastrous day.
And
absolutely.
At the beginning of November, all 3 junior highs did take their 8th grade classes to do a tour at Global, and then Global held a parent information night. So they definitely are working to get the word out and get it out early to those junior high students. One area, I mentioned this to Dr. Kane earlier, that we need to be looking at is making sure our junior high counselors are letting our low socioeconomic students know about Global, making sure their parents know about Global, and the benefits that it does offer, because one of the things that an early college high school is supposed to support is that low SES population.
And we can certainly be more aggressive in recruiting at the junior highs. I think that's something we can do better. Would be even, aggressively having parent night at Global, having parent night at the 3 junior highs. So I think we need to come up with some recommendations and bring that back to the board. And if you've got ideas between now and then, feel free to make suggestions. We actually found the original proposal. Miss Billy, who seems to be able to find anything imaginable, found the original Global from former Superintendent Dr. Wilcox. And I noticed Longview was on our list, and that's where Dr. Wilcox is. But it actually says, it reinforces that it was to serve traditionally underserved students. And one of the goals, of course, at this time it says that Waxahachie had 6,500 students, and it would say, therefore, we should increase it to a maximum of 500. So mathematically, if we're looking at almost 9,000, literally almost 9,000 students, then we'd be looking at about 650, which I think is the capacity of the school.
I believe you're correct. And one thing that I did see when we were looking at these historical documents, and kudos to Billy and Shelley's office for being able to find them.
She and Miss Laura.
But on the TEA documents, it looks like in the past, the early college high school classes were limited to between 100 and 125. I checked the documents for this year, and there may be something that's hiding from me, but I don't believe that there is a size limit on those classes anymore. So there shouldn't be an issue with growing it to 600 or 650.
Figure with that nice new facility.
Dr. Kane,
Yes, sir.
my recollections that Global had to be coded as a separate campus without any interaction or overlap with Waxahachie High School in order for us to receive a pretty substantial amount of funding. And that amount of funding never came. I'm just going to throw out.
Was it a grant?
Well,
Did we apply for
I
a
don't
grant?
know what money we
Okay.
got, but I know several $1 million we didn't get that we were told we'd be receiving.
Wow.
And could we look at, is there any possibilities that students at Global could be involved in some activities that are at the Waxahachie High School? A band would be the best example.
Well, absolutely, there would be, and you may be referring to the note, that UIO rules at the time, and it could have been part of the grant. You couldn't offer, I don't know why it was never offered. You know, why, it's curious to me that we have.
That was several years ago, but Dr. Wilcox and I had a meeting with Jim Pitts, and Jim Pitts was going to help us with the state to receive a significant amount, I think it's $6 million. And that, at that time, Mr. Pitts stood up for public education to the Speaker of the House and got out of sorts with him. And after that, anything that had Ellis County on it kind of got put at the back of the back of the stack. And we never received that money, but we followed the requirements they asked us to do to get the money,
grant, and
but
then
we never got the money.
Okay. Let me see if I can get a little history on our part and our understanding of how
Okay.
we got here, if we did anything. Mr. Wilcox, I happen to.
Yeah, you're friends with Dr. Wilcox.
Yeah,
He would know.
Oh, yeah.
Kim could speak with Mr. Pitts, maybe get some additional information.
So you talk to Mr. Pitts, I'll talk to Mr. Wilcox, Dr. Wilcox. And yes,
Again, I'm hazy on that, but
I saw him.
seem to remember that.
Something came up and we had a lot of documents, and so I just called him and I said, "You're still a hero in Waxahachie. They're still talking about what a good job you did on various things." And then he shows up on the Global again, so I'll be happy to call him. It's time for me to catch up anyway. So yes, and then we will also, Mr. President, with your permission, bring that other information and just kind of work toward growing that. Because I would like to hear from, you know, Mr. Armstrong and
Absolutely, and I have a very strong suspicion this will be one of our goals moving forward. We'll be focused on Global, just from hearing what I've been hearing from various trustees.
I don't think it's going to be difficult to have it grow.
Mr. Arnetter, go ahead.
We had an excellent suggestion from someone in the community regarding the academies and all that. It'd be great to have a marketing strategy. I mean, do mailers, newspaper ads, social media, all that good stuff.
I find out we have not just Jenny as a PR person, that we actually have a CTE PR person. So that is something that I would think Global would be, we could get that focus on to help. But yes, when I said aggressive, I meant aggressive.
Yes,
Newspaper.
and my office can certainly help with that as well. I'd be
Right,
glad to.
newspaper, like, there's different ones of us who talk to the radio station. We could make certain we talk about Global. I know you, different ones of you are kind of writing articles for the paper. We could make the next one about Global High School and what we're trying to do. Yes, we just need to get on it, and I'm not gonna wait till the January meeting, because I can tell the intent of the board is to go at all due speed, so I will be doing that, and we'll be bringing information. So we hear you. And agree with you. I mean, it's a great school, and it's very underused. I love
Anything
going
else?
there.
Ms. Bridges?
Thank you, Board.
Thank you very much. Okay, item F, goal data points.
Okay, again, Ms. Blaylock, we're going to make the presentation, and pinch hitting for her tonight is Ms. Lisa Mott.
Good evening, Board. I'm filling in for Shelley tonight to present you with an update document. The goal of this report is simply to update you on progress that the schools are making toward this goal.
Let me kind of do the intro. You're doing just right, but I forgot Shelley was going to. Okay. Okay, Board, you gave us 4 goals, okay? And there were 4 very broad goals. Well, instead of at the end of every year going, oh, here's how we did a year in those goals, we want to track throughout the year. For instance, your goal, like this first one is going to be reading and overall reading scores. Well, we want to break it down. Every month, you will get various reports, so you will know where we are, and so we will know. This is just a sample form that I created, and we really haven't come back to you and said, here's how we're monitoring this. We're practicing that. Assuming you would have liked the style we're doing, this is what one would look like. So, Ms. Mott, that's where.
Thank you,
Why
Dr.
you're
King.
not used to seeing this form.
Right. So on this first one, I'll go through it a little more at length, just so to walk you through the form and what to expect from the form every time. At the top, of course, are the goals that you wrote, and we are dealing with the performance objective listed on here with the common assessments. And of course, we broke these down and the increases we would like to see. And so you see the results there in the middle of the page for the first common assessment for ELAR in grades 3, 4, and 5. And just to note, the way our curriculum is broken down, we usually only have about 1 common assessment every 6 to 9 weeks in ELAR. So you're not going to see multiple tests just in the content area of ELAR. Math and science, social studies, you see more commonly tested a couple times in a semester. But for ELAR, usually only twice in a semester. So on the first common assessment, you can see there for 3rd grade, we met our goal. 4th grade, we did fall short of our goal. And then 5th grade, we met the goal for the first common assessment. The rest of the document goes through each grade level and kind of gives you some of the factors as well as the actions that the curriculum department is taking in as a result of the factors in the situation. So in 3rd grade, some important things to note was that the majority of our 3rd grade teachers did return to 3rd grade again this year, and we love to see that. Everything that we've invested in them, they're continuing to provide for our students. We did give some highlights as well. We like to pay kudos to teachers who are doing an outstanding job, and so we do that here in this document. We had Miss Maples out at Clift with a 38% gain, and a couple other great passing rates for teachers shown there at 100% passing rate on that first assessment at Felty, Marvin, and the dual language program, Miss Barron. So those are all great kudos to those teachers. 4th grade, an important factor to note in 4th grade, very different from 3rd, we do have a lot of new teachers in 4th grade, which is scary, as I presented the last board meeting and talking about those goals, and one of my biggest concerns is 4th grade writing. And so that number of turnover, it is concerning to us as a curriculum department as well as the campus principals. And so we are working to provide additional training and support because 4th grade is a really tough grade level. 3 tested areas, and we want to make sure they have all the support that we can provide. So Ms. Payrot has been providing additional support, and she is meeting with teachers that are struggling with that first common assessment, visiting their classrooms, helping coach them, and then you see in there providing written summaries to the teacher, the principal, and myself so that we can continue to monitor our 4th grade teachers and our students. A couple of things to note on there. Ms. Glass out at Shackelford had the top score in the district for 4th grade of a 95, and Ms. Dufon at Felty with a 94. So kudos to both of those teachers. Our 5th grade ELAR teams, they experienced also a low turnover rate. And sorry, Mr. Robinson, I messed up your screen there. And so just a couple things to note on there. We're giving great kudos at Northside. They're doing an excellent job, Ms. Carrillo and Ms. Lester.
Also, we want you to know that this information presented tonight on these two reports, we're going over with our principals this week. Ms. Blaylock and I are meeting with all campus principals for mid-year data checkpoint with them, where they are presenting their data from the first semester to the other principals as well as the curriculum team, and so that we can help to understand how we can better support them. Okay, so you see at the bottom there then is an action plan. That's kind of a summary of what the curriculum department is doing in response to the scores and all those factors that are contributing, like changeovers in teachers, all those things, and how we are going to respond with their needs. Any questions on the first report that I can answer for ELAR? Okay. The next one that I will be providing to you tonight is on U.S. history at the high school. And you will see at the top, once again, the goals and the performance objective. And then you see our goal for that assessments. So far, we have knocked it out of the park on this one. 60% was the goal, and we are sitting at 83%. But I will tell you there are a lot of factors in this particular situation. One thing to note is that there's only one returning teacher to this team. Okay, this team in the past has been so incredibly strong. They were like one of my curriculum, oh, this team is awesome team, and that's evidenced by the scores in the last couple of years. They run in the mid-90s, great job, but we only had one returning this year. And she is doing a great job. She's seeing increases as well. Very important to note that the authoring of the test is different this year. Okay, in the past we were using a very good test, very valid, but this year to get more teacher buy-in and also to help teachers allow them the input onto the test, they are developing the test as a team, which I think is awesome for them because as new teachers to the content area, they are really studying their curriculum documents, and when you are developing the test, you really have to know what needs to be on the test and then what needs to be taught. So this team is doing a great job working together to do that. Another important thing to note at U.S. History, the junior level class, many of our students have elected to take a dual credit course. Those students are not included in this district common assessment. Their class covers a much bigger time span in U.S. history, so their pace is different. While our dual credit teachers are very aware of what's tested and what they need to prepare our students for, they are not on the same pace, so they do not take these assessments. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. They will be all factored in at the end EOC for U.S. history. Okay, so we are very impressed with our team up there. They're doing a great job working together. We have an added focus on the curriculum documents this year because of the new team, and many of them new to teaching U.S. history.
And in the future, thank you, good job, no reflection on you, but in the future, the plan is just to put the report in the document, in the board report, and just say, are there any questions? That way, one reason there's so much detail, two reasons. One is so we know what we should be doing, what we're doing right to keep on doing, and what we need to change. So you will know that we know, and that this is what we're looking like. So in the future, it would probably be more Ms. Blaylock just saying, we have our data points for this, this, and this. Are there any questions? Rather than go over all the things of what we're doing, because this will be that detailed. So y'all good with that? You like the form? We'll probably be tweaking it some, because I suspect you guys will have some suggestions now that you've gone through two of them. And you may have as many as 4 or 5 per meeting. But this is just a sample, so you will know whether or not we're on track or not on track to meet our goals.
Any questions for Ms. Mott?
So on the U.S. history, even though the numbers were outstanding, you're saying that if the dual credit kids were included, it'd even be better, right? Theoretically?
I absolutely think it would be even better if they were tested, if they had received instruction over the same material at that time period, yes.
But this, and looking at that 60% goal, we also, that we will probably be making some mid-flight corrections because some of these things need to be baseline. And we had a social studies problem, but it actually wasn't at the high school. It was at another level, but because we had a double problem there. So we'll be coming back and saying, this is where some issues are. Because some of it where you would fully expect us to be doing testing and having pre-tests for, we didn't. But we're not going to be discouraged because we're going to use this as a baseline. And that'll still kind of give us an idea. But again, this is kind of we're building this plane as we're flying it. 'Cause I like Dr. Spees' idea, and I like that the board selected these goals, but we're working on how to make certain that we know where we are. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Mont.
Thank you.
Okay, item G would be elections options.
Yes. Ms. Onion.
Thank you, board, for letting me come and talk to you. But first, before I get to my staff, I just want to say, global high school students are the best students. We love them working as student clerks in our elections. I mean, I reached out to some other schools this past election and had no shows on election morning and stuff like that, but I know I can always count on global. They're great. I even have some that have graduated and still come back and help us.
Oh, great.
So today, I'm just going to go over kind of where the elections is going for the county and then also for your May elections. So the county has purchased new voting equipment. We've just basically have upgraded our system that we currently have. So it is still paper-based, but it also has a component that's marking device. So every voter will come into the polls, they'll receive their ballot with their ballot style code on it, and then they will place it into a marking device. They'll mark their ballot on that device. That will help with any voter intent. It will be clear of how the voter wants to vote. There will be no mistakes. That will also help allow for your elections, it's more than vote for one, so that will identify to them, hey, they're not making the full selection, and it won't let them overvote. So we're really excited about the new system. And then they'll also place it into a scanner just like we do today. So that will happen during early voting and election day. The other portion of receiving this new equipment and implementing it is so that we can go to county-wide polling locations on election day. So that means a voter can go to any location on election day in Ellis County. If they're an eligible voter, then they can vote on their ballot style in that location. So that's where our Commissioners Court approved it's actually a program that the state offers. The county has to apply for it for one election when the county's on the ballot. And then after that, if we get successful status, then we can use it from then on. So our goal here in May of 2019, the elections in Ellis County does have a proposition on the ballot. So we will be sharing our ballot with all the entities in Ellis County. It's one proposition, and then all of your races on the ballot. And so having that on the ballot, we're able to apply for countywide polling locations for this May 2019. So it gives a little different feel, but it opens it up. It's going to be voter convenience wherever the voter is in the county. If they, work somewhere else, they can go into any location just like they can today for early voting. So I met with all the entities a couple weeks ago that are in Ellis County, and that's why I'm here today to talk to you guys about moving forward with this program. And everybody, actually, I'm pretty much have talked to all entities in Ellis County, even those that have never held their election. They're coming on board. So that means a voter can go one-stop shop in May. That's our goal, is to convene it for the voter so that they can vote on their city, their school, the water district, whatever the case may be. So they're not having to go to multiple locations to get their ballot, or they don't go to that other location because they only want to go one place. So we're trying to help out everybody in Ellis County, and then at the same time, we're trying to be consistent with our polling locations between early voting and election day, because it gets hard for a voter going back and forth, especially in even years when we have primary election, then we have your election, then we have primary runoff, and then we have the general election. It gets kind of confusing for the voters to keep hopping back and forth to some locations that we never use, and then vice versa. So we're trying to be consistent. Of course, every polling location that we look at, we try to make sure it's ADA compliant. It can hold a large amount of crowd. It meets all that type of criteria. So here today, what I presented to everybody a couple weeks ago was the base 5 early voting locations that we normally use in our county elections. We'd like to implement those here in the May election, which would be the elections office down the street, Midlothian Conference Center, the Ellis County Sub Courthouse, Red Oak Municipal Center, and Palmer ISD Annex Building. That would be the base locations to use. And then so any voter, any voter can go to any of those locations in May. And so now I'm reaching out to the entities to see if they feel like these locations are good and will help their district, or if they're wanting to add in an additional location based on them participating in the election. So, for instance, Italy is we're going to add them in. It's going to cover all of our southern entities, so Milford's coming on board, so cover Milford and Italy and some other ones that are down there. And so we'll add them in, and for instance, if all those entities end up canceling their election in May, then we'll remove that location and we'll go back to the base 5 locations. Does anybody have any questions? So I'm here today to talk to you guys because I know this polling location has been historically an early voting site for you. So it's up for discussion to see if you'd like to just continue to go with the 5 early voting locations, or if you'd like for us to add back in this location for early voting. It can also be like a mobile site. Ferris, I'm going to do 2 days, the last 2 days in Ferris Library to kind of catch those voters up there. So it can be, it can be an option for you guys. And then I guess election day is the same thing. Historically, you guys have gone to Marvin Elementary School on election day, but do you want to put that back in the mix, or do you want to go with our proposed 17 locations?
Go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
We discussed this at length a month or so ago, and obviously I've been to your office a couple of times, wanting to get your advice on if your location, being the elections office, could handle the volume, because it's been my contingent. I've been pushing very hard to remove our schools as early voting locations for safety reasons, and it's come to light in this board book that my interpretation of what's written here is they have to remain locations based upon a law or future location possibly. Did I read that correctly in here?
Because it would be just like if you're wanting a location to add in to this, is that what you're?
No,
I'm sorry.
If they were, if your office stipulated that a school building was to be used, we would have to provide that.
Okay, so what you're referring to is, by the code, the Texas Election Code, we are supposed to actually identify public buildings in a precinct-based. I'm no longer precinct-based. I'm going to be county-wide based. But the fact that we're supposed to try to find public buildings, because then there's no cost upon the elections department, and usually they're ADA compliant. A lot of times the old schools are not and stuff like that. But so that's out there. But from my view, I agree to remove it from the schools, and that's a lot of talk that we always have every legislation. We'll see what comes about this legislation is to try to not use schools for polling. So
the bottom line, you have discretion on that. So moving forward about this building, I think it was our consensus, and we voted to keep this as a early voting location, and also Marvin Elementary for election day.
So for the full 7 days, Monday through Friday, and then the Monday and Tuesday for early voting, this location. I'm sure y'all probably looked at stats. We have about 400 people come out in 2016 here, and about 400 over 2018. It was more in 2017 because the city was on the ballot. And it's something too that we can, the board decides to do that this time, we can relook at it again next year, just to kind of see what was the turnout. Was it still beneficial for you, or did it look like other locations handled it for their voters? So it's definitely, optional that we can always look at.
I think it was more of a service, providing that extra location for people to come. Nostalgia, history, whatever you want to call it, people, opportunity for our staff to interact with the public, a combination of different reasons why we want to keep it. Am I speaking out of turn, or is that
No.
basically what we?
No, that's what we decided
Okay.
as a board, that we would like
And
to
if-
keep
Mhm.
early voting here and election day at Marvin.
And Marvin. And again, your voters can go to any location in the county during early voting or election day. So you'll be getting results,
Okay.
from all the
You're
locations.
saying, though, that there will be a county proposition on the ballot
Yes.
in May.
Is that the forced
So-
annexation?
So does that mean the election will be on a Tuesday?
No.
Okay.
But it does mean that the county will split the cost with the district.
Okay,
Yes.
so we'll still have the
For
Saturday,
2019.
election day will
Yes.
still be the Saturday. Okay.
Yes, that's the uniform election day, is the first Saturday in May. And then if for some reason the ISD is able to cancel your election, I'll remove both of those here in Marvin from the rest of the election. And we'll just use it as if, only if you're on the ballot. Is that? Okay,
Yeah, we talked about this at length a few
Okay.
months ago.
perfect.
Anything else? Thank you very much, Ms. Johnny.
Thank you.
Okay, board. Next on our item is the consent agenda. We have items A through I. We can take these all at once. If there's one or two that you would like to remove and discuss individually, or we can take them individually, however you prefer. I need a motion.
Motion to approve items A through I in the consent agenda.
A motion by Mr. Rogers. There's a second by Ms. Starnader. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, moving on to action item number 6. Consideration with possible action to approve the 2017, 2018 annual financial audit report.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 2017-2018 annual financial audit report.
Moved by Dr. Langley, seconded by Mr. Schofield. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, letter B, consideration of possible action regarding the selection and retention of a consultant to perform superintendent search, along with possible action to allow the board president to schedule callback interviews of selected candidates and/or negotiate and execute all necessary documents with selected consultant. I am assuming there's going to be quite a bit of discussion on this, so who wants to go first? Okay.
It's a dogfight.
I have to have some kind of action.
I'll go first.
Motion, discussion? Go ahead, Mr. McCutcheon.
So after we interviewed these 5 firms, I'm sure we all went about it a little bit differently. I had 3 that stuck out particularly to me that, or I guess my 3 finalists, if you will. I did reach out to every referral or reference that we got on all of them. And surprisingly enough, probably, I didn't do the math, I bet 70 to 80% of all of them replied. Half of that was phone calls. And on all 3 of them, it was very positive. So it really took a lot of conversations and hearing different experiences for me to determine which one that I felt most comfortable with. And if you look at it from, their background, from experience, from the tenure in which the candidates that they've placed in the past, the one that stuck out to me the most was Ray and Associates. The feedback I got was just over the top from everyone I spoke with. And the gentleman that's going to be helping him locally, or in this area, I guess, Harold Rahm, he made mention of Mike Turner. I talked to Mike for probably 30, 45 minutes this weekend, and he spoke volumes to Mr. Rahm's character. And I also had some contacts in Belton from my time in college there when he was the superintendent. And same thing. I mean, they were over the top for this guy. So I think that there's a number of them that would be good and could do a good job for us. But to me, they stuck out as a front runner.
And Mr. McCutcheon, when I was the superintendent in Waco, Mr. Rahm was the superintendent in Groesbeck, and I would like to
And I did forget to mention some of you guys who have A&M ties. I think he did say that he was an Aggie.
Who did you think the other two were?
HYA was one I thought was really good. The key feedback I got on that one was the lady that would be helping with the search here in this area, her name was Nola. And she was very knowledgeable about a lot of contacts here, but they mentioned that she'd had some issues with family possibly, and she may not be included in the search. And I had 2 people specifically tell me that if she's not involved, that you might be best to move on to someone else because she was that critical in helping them locate someone.
My personal opinion after listening to all the presentations, we can't go wrong with any of them.
That's true.
So, I mean, it's going to really come down to personal preference on the majority of us prefer. And to be honest with you, I don't have a personal opinion on any of them.
Mr. President, I really, top of my list were Ray and Associates, as Mr. McCutcheon said, also Wash Gallegos. But I tilted it to Ray as my choice because they talked about they would do an annual board superintendent self-assessment survey. And I thought that we might find that real helpful. So that led me to put them in my top spot.
Ray was one of my top 2, and Walsh was one of my top 2. And I'd be interested to hear. I think we expressed some concern about Walsh having a conflict being our law firm, and I'd like to hear if anybody still feels that way or why they feel that way.
That's why I asked the question during the interview, and I mean, we all heard the response. I mean, on the surface, it looks like it could be. But they answered that question when I asked it. There are districts they have place superintendents that they do represent, so I wouldn't think that there would be a conflict specifically there.
I did talk to Walsh on the phone because I was uncomfortable with that to an extent. After I talked to him, I didn't really see it as a conflict after I had a chance to visit for Laura. I think it was about a 30-minute phone call. She promised, by the way, she wasn't billing us for. I checked. My mathematical mind was working on it today. I hadn't gotten that far, but I did run the numbers on it. And these guys can correct me if I'm wrong. With Walsh, the best I could figure is going to cost $21,000 to $23,000 to pay for it. Y'all may want to note these. Now, JG Consulting, the best I could come up was about $18,000. Now, remember, this is not counting if you reimburse candidates to come in. This is their fees. That's the accounting firm. They did it for free. No, that was a joke for Ryan. HYA was going to look like it was going to run us about 25. And that's 1,900. Ray looked like it was going to be about 15. And Lesser and Crafts was tough because they were going to charge $25K for it. But there was $2,500, excuse me. But there was a bunch of
a la carte.
Yeah, it's going to be a la carte, and it was. I deal with numbers like Judd every day, probably not quite as many, and it was confusing enough that I couldn't make you a good assumption, an estimate on what it would cost. I don't know. I think they're all qualified. They've all placed people. I think that the true responsibility in this decision relies with the people sitting at this table, because the reality of it, I believe, is a strong number of the candidates that would apply would be the same, regardless of who they are. And I've heard I kind of thought, well, they don't want somebody with a stable of applicants, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think any of these guys have that, but we darn sure got to have somebody with the contacts. Because if you're foolish enough, they need to have people in mind right now. Because if they don't, we don't need them. So that's my 2 cents on it there.
I'm gonna kind of go ahead and start in it. I'd like to hear from everybody, so be ready.
My top two choices were also Ray and Walsh. And mainly because of what Mr. Schoolfield just mentioned, they have people on board that definitely have the contacts. Dr. Dixon with Walsh and Associates or Walsh Gallegos. And then Mr. I don't know if it's Dr. Rom or Mr. Rom, but excuse me, can't talk. So, and I mean, I'd like to check those two out more and make sure, so we can be ready to pick one.
Mr. Rogers?
I've already went. Those are my two also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Kriegel?
My two were Ray and Walsh. I did have a concern with Ray that they haven't placed anybody in Texas since 2015. Am I correct on that? That they were the group that haven't?
I don't know, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I looked at that for every one of them and that ran together, to be honest.
Right, I understand it did on me too, but I believe they were the ones that hadn't placed in Texas since 2015. So that was and aren't they the ones that said they wanted to get back in Texas? So they'll be their initial, they'll be our initial run. My concern with Walsh is that if we were in bed with them too much.
Yeah, in 15, they placed Austin, Fort Worth, Louisville.
Right, but it was.
What about 16 and 17?
No.
There are none. Not in Texas. There's a lot of placements, but not in Texas.
Maybe that's why they had Dr. Ram. He just retired. It could be that's why they picked him back up. They lost
No,
him to
yeah, I
Texas.
remember him saying he was eager to get back to Texas.
Yes.
And do work here.
I will add that just in, presentations and, we ask the question of every group, who will we be working with? And with those two groups, there was a good, exchange of back and forth. And it seemed like, you get a feeling for how personable these people are. And those two groups I felt comfortable with.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys. My two were Walsh Gallegos and JG. I'm the only one that preferred JG. So, but that's where and that was in no particular order. That was just two that stood out for me for various reasons. So, how would you guys like to proceed?
You've kind of didn't you? It's
I mean, we can take no action. We can narrow it down to two more that you want to do some research on, do some more vetting, or we can have a motion to pick one and approve it and give me the authority to start negotiating a contract with them.
And you had tentatively said December 18th at 12 for me to reserve it for the board because you felt like the board might want to talk to them before the holidays. Because the midwinter conference is a big day. That was the one thing that was expressed, that they asked us to move forward rather quickly rather than later because of the conferences in January that they would be in front of potential candidates. So
I think it'd be good if we're ready to go ahead and select tonight. They would not be able to start until after Christmas or after January the 1st, but they could be kind of thinking through.
But y'all could meet with them 10
right,
just
we
for
could
2
do that,
hours.
and they also could be working out the preliminary stuff to hit the ground really running.
I mean, technically, we still have to negotiate a contract with them too. So.
Right.
I need time to
negotiate with me. Know that doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
If you fold these numbers that you had tonight, the two with the most hits, for lack of a better word, going down there, unless I'm number Walsh at 4, Ray at 5.
And there's really
there's not much differentiation.
I just think this is a huge decision, so I feel like we need to make sure we.
When is the exact date of the midwinter conference?
The last weekend in January.
And we don't meet again until January the 14th. So if we waited to the meeting in January 14th to approve it, theoretically, you'd have to have a contract negotiated in 4 or 5 days.
And it's not like everyone in the state doesn't know Waxahachie open. So they could still, even if it was the 14th, they could still, I mean, they just want to get out there, prime hiring season, and that's more of a nice to have than a have to have.
Yeah, I don't think the conference is the end all be all.
Right. It's just very convenient for them to
Sure,
be there and know
sure.
everybody's there and don't have to pay, you know. Very cheap for them.
Let me know what you guys want to do. You know, I'm not going to make a motion.
2 or 3 of these folks that we met with mentioned the timing being perfect for us right now. And I think that they weren't referring to, let's wait till January after the holiday. It's not a rush, but the timing to me feels good. And I mean, I don't know what else I would vet out personally other than what we've got in this packet, what we've seen, and the people that we've talked to. I mean, I would be good moving forward, making a motion to select Ray.
State that motion. If that's.
Do you guys, one big difference in the two is one's based in Iowa and one's based in Texas. Is that a concern with anyone?
It was to me. It was to me. I can't remember the lady's name that was with Walsh. What was that lady sold it for me. I'm just telling you. She's going to have contacts that nobody else is going to have. Nobody else is going to have.
I have full confidence in our interim superintendent. I would like to see us check out our top 2 more. I mean, I have phone calls that haven't been returned and that sort of thing. So I would be happy to.
You could also bring back both of them. I mean, the motion is written so that if you wanted to, if you are.
We can do anything we want the way it's written. I need a motion.
That you could say, we'd like to talk to both of them again and let them know they're down to 2. Or think about it. I mean, is it more information you need from them or more discussion with everybody? So
probably both.
I'm good with either one of those individuals.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion. We select Ray and Associates for our superintendent search.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. McCutcheon, second by Mr. Schofield to select Ray and Associates as our superintendent search firm. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. I'm going to ask for a raise of hands. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Or raise your hand. Motion carries 4-3.
Okay, now, would you like for me to ask them to come back? I just tentatively schedule that. Would you like for them to come back from 12 to 2?
We'll contact them tomorrow and talk to them.
I mean, but do you want to tell them to go ahead and?
We'll talk to them tomorrow and figure out where we're going to move forward then. Okay. Item number 7 is closed session. At this time, the board will go into closed session to Texas Education Code, Section 551.01 at SEC. It is 9:08.
Forget to powder our nose, our collective nose.
Oh, yeah, we got time.
faithful. We need to give you a round of applause for being.
Daily Sun.
Is it? Yeah, it's on.
Daily Sun. I call you the Daily Sun. Oh yeah, the Daily Sun.
Yay,
I'm gonna hey, tell Scott Brooks I didn't get my paper. So when he brings me my paper, then I didn't get it at the office for Sunday's paper. That's where I get it delivered to. I got you.
So, yeah, talk to whoever is his route person.
You know, for a while I was getting two. Did Donna tell you that?
Hey, I was getting two as well.
There's another paper in town that I'm not subscribed to.
10:23, we will reconvene back into open session. Item number 8A, Human Resources, consideration to approve the personnel report as recommended by Superintendent. Go ahead, Mr. Avishai.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, we have a request to hire 4 teachers, a nurse, and acknowledge the retirement of 4 educators. These 4 educators leave us with a combined 128 years of experience in education. And these are Brenda Jackson, diagnostician, Sandra Reed, dyslexia testing specialist, Donna Shepard, CTE teacher, and Linda Spencer, gifted and talented specialist. So urge you to accept these retirements and also authorize the hiring presented to you tonight as recommended by your superintendent.
This time I'll entertain a motion to approve the HR report.
Make the motion that we approve the HR report.
Moved by Ms. Kriegel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Schofield. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, consideration of possible action to appoint additional school marshals who've been certified by the Texas Commission of Law Enforcement pursuant to WISD Board Policy CKC Local and Legal.
At this time, Mr. President, I urge the board to approve the 2 marshals that were presented to you in closed session, as authorized by 551.076 of the Government Code and as required to be maintained confidentially. These 2 employees did not have the opportunity to attend training at the beginning of the school year. We've obtained authorization from Texas Commission on Law Enforcement to send them to training, grant-funded training. Recently, they have completed that training successfully. They've been fully certified by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement to be authorized as school marshals, and tonight we urge your approval of the 2 individuals that were presented to you in closed session.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the 2 additional school marshals as presented.
Moved by Mr. Rogers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Langley. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Most important motion of the night, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Schofield, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Kriegel. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.